Martha and Joseph Reynolds lived in a charming old farmhouse, surrounded by oak trees and flower gardens. The morning light filtered through the kitchen windows as Martha, her silver hair pulled back in a simple bun, poured coffee into Joseph's favorite mug. "Happy anniversary, my dear," Joseph said with a gentle smile, his weathered hand sliding a small box across the wooden table. 50 years together, and he still looked at her like she hung the moon. Martha opened it to find a handcrafted wooden brooch. "You made this?" she asked, fingering the delicate carving of intertwined roses. "Been working on it for weeks in the shed, thought it had matched your Sunday dress." Martha pinned it to her blouse, her eyes misty. "It's perfect." Despite being worth billions, the Reynolds lived modestly. Their wealth came from Joseph's groundbreaking water filtration system he'd invented in their garage decades ago. Martha, with her sharp business mind, had turned his invention into Reynolds Clean Technologies, now a global corporation. "Our Timothy's graduation is next weekend," Martha said, sipping her coffee, "18 already, hard to believe." Joseph nodded, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Our first grandchild finishing high school. What should we get him?" "I've been thinking about that. He's always admired your pocket watch, the one your father gave you." Joseph pulled out the antique timepiece from his pocket. The gold was dulled from years of handling the chain, showing its age. "This old thing, it barely keeps time anymore. What if we had it restored, and maybe added something special for his graduation?" Joseph's face brightened. "Like what? Something he could pass down someday, too, perhaps a custom engraving, or setting a meaningful stone on the cover." They spent the morning discussing possibilities. Timothy was heading to college to study engineering. Following in his grandfather's footsteps, he'd grown up listening to Joseph's stories, sitting beside him in the workshop, learning to create with his hands. "There's that fancy jewelry store downtown," Joseph suggested. "The one with the French name, Finest Jewels." Martha corrected with a smile. "Not French, dear. They do custom work. Saw it in the paper." Martha nodded. "We could go today. I have that check to drop off at the Children's Hospital anyway." They didn't drive their luxury cars much. Joseph preferred his old pickup truck, and Martha drove a modest sedan. Their home, while comfortable, wasn't a mansion. They'd never seen the point of extravagance. After breakfast, Martha changed into her favorite lavender outfit, a simple button-up jacket and matching pants she'd owned for years. Joseph wore what he always wore: denim overalls over a work shirt with his trusty leather jacket and gray fedora. "Should we dress up a bit more?" Martha asked, glancing at her husband's attire. Joseph shrugged. "Why? We're just going to talk about a watch." "You're right," Martha said, slipping her wedding band, her only piece of jewelry, onto her finger. No reason to be fancy. Their wealth wasn't obvious. Nothing about their appearance suggested they could buy the entire shopping district without blinking. Joseph's calloused hands and sun-weathered face spoke of hard work, not luxury. Martha's simple hairstyle and minimal makeup belonged to a woman who valued practicality. As they drove downtown in Joseph's old truck, they chatted about Timothy's upcoming graduation party, the new rose bushes Martha wanted to plant, and Joseph's latest woodworking project. Neither of them gave a second thought to their appearance. As they parked and walked toward Finest Jewels, they'd never cared much about what others thought of them. Their lifestyle choices weren't about hiding their wealth. They simply preferred simplicity. Little did they know that their humble appearance was about to trigger a series of events that would leave the staff of Finest Jewels wishing they'd never judged a book by its cover. Finest Jewels gleamed like a temple of opulence. Crystal chandeliers through prisms of light across marble floors. Glass cases displayed necklaces, rings, and bracelets that cost more than most people's homes. The air itself seemed expensive, perfumed with exclusivity. As Martha and Joseph pulled open the heavy glass doors, a security guard in a tailored suit gave them a once over, his expression shifting from alert to dismissive. The message was clear: people like them didn't belong. "Can I help you?" he asked, positioning himself subtly between them and the display cases. "We're here about a custom piece," Martha explained politely. The guard hesitated, then nodded toward the reception desk. "Check in over there at the polished counter." A young woman with immaculate makeup glanced up, her welcoming smile freezing when she saw them. Her eyes flicked to her colleague, a silent message passing between them. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked, her voice cooling several degrees. "No, we don't," Martha replied. "We're interested in having an antique watch restored and customized." The receptionist's perfectly manicured fingers tapped at her keyboard. "I see. Well, our master jewelers are quite busy. The wait for custom work is considerable. We're not in a hurry," Joseph said, his tone friendly. "It's for our grandson's graduation next weekend, but even if it takes longer, that's fine." Her eyebrows rose slightly. "Custom pieces typically start at $20,000. Joseph nodded calmly. "That's fine." The receptionist seemed taken aback by his casual response. but recovered quickly one moment. Please, she retreated to a back office, whispering urgently to someone inside Martha, and Joseph stood patiently observing the other customers. A woman in a designer dress was trying on a diamond bracelet, a man in an Italian suit examined cufflinks through a jeweler's loop. Everyone looked like they'd stepped out of a luxury magazine. Everyone except them. They think we can't afford anything here, Martha whispered, a hint of amusement in her voice. Joseph squeezed her hand. Let them think what they want. The receptionist returned with a middle-aged man in an impeccably tailored suit. His name tag read, Bradley Wellington, manager. Good afternoon, Bradley said, his eyes making the same dismissive assessment. The others had. I understand you're interested in our custom services. Yes, Martha replied. We'd like to restore this pocket watch, and perhaps add a special touch for our grandson. Joseph pulled out the antique timepiece, placing it carefully on the counter. Bradley barely glanced at it. I see. And what sort of budget did you have in mind for this project? Martha and Joseph exchanged looks. We hadn't set a specific limit, Martha answered. Whatever it takes to make it special. Bradley's smile didn't reach his eyes. Our artisans are among the finest in the world. Their work commands appropriate compensation. We understand, Joseph said. Perhaps, Bradley suggested, his tone condescending, you might be more comfortable at Timewise on 5th Street. They offer more economical options. Martha's back straightened. We're here because we understand you're the best. Bradley's smile tightened. Indeed we are, which is why our clientele typically comes prepared for significant investment. By now, several customers had taken notice of the exchange. A woman in diamonds whispered to her companion. Two salespeople watched from behind their counters, smirking. Perhaps you could show us some examples of your restoration work, Martha suggested, refusing to be intimidated. Bradley sighed, the sound heavy with inconvenience. Miranda, he called to a nearby associate. Would you show these folks our vintage collection, the entry-level pieces? Miranda approached reluctantly, leading them to a small display case tucked in a corner. These are our more accessible items, she explained, emphasizing the word accessible as if it were synonymous with cheap. The entry-level watches still had 5-figure price tags. Joseph examined them carefully, asking intelligent questions about mechanisms and craftsmanship that Miranda struggled to answer. Do you have anything with custom gemstone work? Martha inquired. Those pieces are in our premium collection, Miranda replied stiffly. Could we see them? Miranda glanced toward Bradley, who gave an almost imperceptible shake of his head. I'm afraid those are shown by appointment only to qualified buyers. Qualified buyers? Joseph repeated. Yes, Miranda said, lowering her voice conspiratorially. We need to ensure serious interest before presenting our most exclusive pieces. Martha's eyes narrowed slightly. And how do you determine who's a serious buyer? Miranda fumbled. Well, typically our premium clients are. That is, they usually. She trailed off, uncomfortable with articulating the store's unspoken policy of judging customers by their appearance and pedigree. The tension was broken by a crash as a young sales associate dropped a tray of cleaning cloths nearby. All eyes turned briefly to the commotion, but Martha noticed Bradley making a subtle wrap-it-up gesture to Miranda. The message was clear: get rid of them. Bradley Wellington had dealt with browsers before, people who wandered in with no intention or ability to purchase anything. In his 20 years at Finest Jewels, he developed a sixth sense for who belonged and who didn't, and these two definitely didn't belong. He approached Martha and Joseph with practiced poise. I believe there's been a misunderstanding, he said smoothly. Our restoration services require a substantial deposit. $5,000 non-refundable, just to begin the assessment. Joseph raised an eyebrow. That seems steep for an assessment. Quality assurance, Bradley replied with a dismissive wave. It prevents our artisans from wasting time on speculative projects. Martha's expression remained pleasant, but her eyes had cooled. I see. And is this policy posted somewhere? I don't recall seeing it mentioned. Bradley's smile tightened. It's standard practice for our level of clientele. By now, a small crowd had gathered to watch the interaction. Other customers, security personnel, and several staff members. The afternoon sun streamed through the windows, catching on diamonds and crystal, creating an almost theatrical spotlight on the unfolding scene. Perhaps, Bradley continued, voice rising slightly to ensure others could hear, you'd be more comfortable somewhere that aligns better with your means. A titter of laughter came from a well-dressed couple nearby. The woman whispered something to her companion, who smirked in response. Martha stood perfectly still, her dignity intact despite the humiliation. Joseph's weathered hand found hers, giving it a gentle squeeze. We're just looking to have a family heirloom restored, Joseph said calmly. If you're not interested in our business. It's not a question of interest, Bradley interrupted, his voice dripping with condescension. It's a question of suitability. Finest Jewels has a reputation to maintain. Our pieces are investments, not. He glanced pointedly at Martha's wooden brooch, costume jewelry. The insult hung in the air. A female employee behind the counter didn't even try to hide her smirk. The security guard moved closer, anticipating the need to escort them out. Now see here, Joseph began, his voice rising slightly. Bradley raised a hand. Please, sir, there's no need for a scene. He turned to the security guard. Richard, please show these people out. You're asking us to leave? Martha asked, her voice steady despite the public humiliation. I'm suggesting that everyone's time would be better served if you explored options more appropriate for your situation. Bradley's eyes flicked to Joseph's worn overalls, then to Martha's simple attire. We cater to a certain clientele. The security guard stepped forward. Sir, ma'am, if you'll come with me. Martha stood her ground. This is discrimination. This is a private business, Bradley countered. And I have every right to refuse service. Whispers rippled through the gathered crowd. Someone coughed awkwardly. A woman in designer clothes pretended to examine a bracelet, but her eyes remained fixed on the unfolding drama. I'd like to speak with the owner, Martha said, her voice firm. Bradley laughed. The owner, Mr. Harrington, wouldn't waste his time on this matter. Now, please leave before I'm forced to call the authorities. The red velvet rope that separated the store entrance from the main showroom suddenly seemed like a barrier between two worlds. The world of luxury and privilege, and the world of ordinary people who didn't belong. Come on, Martha, Joseph said softly. We'll go somewhere else. The security guard moved to escort them, but Bradley stepped forward instead, clearly enjoying his moment of power. Allow me, he said, gesturing toward the door with exaggerated courtesy. As they walked through the showroom toward the exit, Martha and Joseph felt the weight of every stare, heard every whispered comment. Bradley walked behind them, a triumphant smile playing at his lips. At the door, he couldn't resist one final jab. Perhaps try them all, he suggested loudly. I believe they're having a sale on costume jewelry this weekend. More laughter followed. A young saleswoman with blonde hair actually covered her mouth to stifle a giggle. Martha paused at the threshold, turning to face Bradley. Her expression wasn't angry. It was almost pitying. You've made quite a mistake today, she said simply. Bradley smirked. The only mistake was assuming you could afford our services. Good day. The glass door swung shut behind them, leaving Martha and Joseph standing on the sidewalk, the afternoon sun warm on their faces. Joseph's arm went around Martha's shoulders. I'm sorry, dear, he said. We should have gone somewhere else. Martha's eyes had a strange gleam to them. Not tears, but something closer to determination. No, she replied, reaching into her purse. I think we're exactly where we need to be. She pulled out her phone and pressed a single button. Martha's phone call was brief but decisive. James, it's Martha Reynolds. Yes, at Finest Jewels downtown. Could you come by and bring Edward with the papers? She hung up and turned to Joseph with a small smile. 5 minutes. Joseph chuckled and shook his head. Are you sure about this? 50 years together, and you still ask me that. Martha's eyes twinkled. Let's go sit on that bench. I want to see their faces. Inside the store, business had resumed. Bradley was regaling several employees with an embellished version of what had just happened, mimicking Joseph's posture and Martha's voice to appreciative laughter. And then she asked to speak to the owner, Bradley chortled, as if Charles Harrington would waste his time on people who probably can't even afford the cleaning cloth we use. Miranda, the young associate, laughed along but glanced uncomfortably toward the door. Should we really have thrown them out like that? Bradley dismissed her concern with a wave. Trust me, I've been doing this for 20 years. You can spot time wasters a mile away. Those two probably saved for months just to walk in here. Outside, a sleek black Bentley pulled up to the curb. A uniformed driver opened the door for a distinguished man in his 60s wearing an impeccable suit. He was followed by a younger man carrying a leather portfolio. Together, they approached Martha and Joseph on the bench. Mrs. Reynolds, the older man said with a slight bow. Mr. Reynolds, what can we do for you today? Martha stood, straightening her simple lavender jacket. James, thank you for coming so quickly. We've encountered a situation. Inside, the store had fallen silent. Through the glass frontage, everyone could see the Bentley, the driver, and the distinguished visitors now conversing with the couple they'd just humiliated. "Who are they talking to?" Miranda whispered, peering through the window. Bradley squinted. "That's James Thorne. He's one of the top financial advisors in the country." His confident demeanor faltered slightly. What would he be doing with them? The younger man in the group outside opened his portfolio, presenting papers for Martha to review. She nodded, signed something, and handed them to Joseph, who added his signature. "What's happening?" a customer asked, all pretense of shopping abandoned as everyone watched the scene unfold. Bradley's face had lost some of its color. "I'm not sure." Outside, Martha was speaking animatedly, gesturing toward the jewelry store. James Thorne nodded gravely while the younger man took notes. Then, to everyone's shock, another vehicle pulled up. This one a Rolls-Royce with tinted windows. "That's Charles Harrington's car," Bradley whispered, recognition dawning. The owner, indeed Charles Harrington, founder and CEO of the finest jewels chain, emerged from the back seat. In his 70s, immaculately dressed, he spotted the group and broke into a wide smile. "Martha! Joseph!" he called, approaching with arms outstretched. What a delightful surprise. The blood drained from Bradley's face as he watched his employer embrace the couple he'd just thrown out of the store. Inside, the atmosphere had shifted from amusement to alarm. Employees exchanged worried glances. Customers whispered behind their hands. Bradley tugged at his collar, suddenly finding it too tight. "Who are those people?" Miranda demanded, her voice tight with anxiety. Before Bradley could answer, Martha, Joseph, James Thorne, the young assistant, and Charles Harrington all turned toward the store. Martha pointed directly at Bradley through the window, and Charles Harrington's expression darkened visibly. The group began walking toward the entrance. "I think," Bradley said, his voice barely audible, "we've made a terrible mistake." The security guard moved to open the door, his earlier disdain replaced with deference. As the door swung open, Bradley found himself face to face with the couple he'd humiliated and his boss, who looked angrier than he'd ever seen him. "Bradley," Charles Harrington said, his voice dangerously quiet, "we need to talk." The atmosphere in Finest Jewels had transformed completely. Where there had been smirks and whispers, now there was only stunned silence. Every eye was fixed on the unfolding scene. "Charles," Martha said pleasantly, "we didn't expect to see you today." Charles Harrington's expression was a mix of delight toward the Reynolds and barely contained fury toward his staff. "When James called to say you were here, I couldn't believe it. And then he told me what happened." He turned to Bradley, whose face had gone from pale to ashen. "Mr. Wellington, do you have any idea who you just threw out of my store?" Bradley swallowed hard. I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding." "Indeed there has," Charles agreed, his voice ice cold. "You've just insulted Martha and Joseph Reynolds." The name dropped like a bomb in the silent showroom. Miranda gasped audibly. A customer's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor. "Reynolds," Bradley repeated weakly. "As in Reynolds Clean Technologies?" James Thorne confirmed, adjusting his glasses. "The company currently valued at approximately $87 billion. Murmurs rippled through the store. Reynolds Clean Technologies was a household name. Their water filtration systems were in millions of homes, hospitals, and businesses worldwide. Their humanitarian work had been featured in countless news stories. But," Bradley stammered, looking frantically between the elderly couple and his boss, "they don't look like billionaires." Martha finished for him, her voice gentle but firm. "And how exactly should billionaires look, Mr. Wellington?" Bradley had no answer. Joseph, who had remained quiet until now, spoke up. "We came in to have my grandfather's watch restored for our grandson." He pulled out the antique timepiece again. "It's not worth much in dollars, but it means the world to our family." Charles Harrington took the watch, examining it with reverence. "It would be our honor to restore this for you, Joseph. No charge, of course." "We'll pay full price," Martha insisted. "We don't want special treatment." Charles smiled sadly. "From what I understand, special treatment is precisely what you received today, just not the kind anyone should want." The young man with the portfolio stepped forward. "Mrs. Reynolds, the papers you signed." "Ah, yes," Martha nodded. "Charles, we've just finalized the donation for the Children's Hospital wing. $50 million, as discussed." Bradley looked like he might faint. "How wonderful," Charles exclaimed. "The Harrington Reynolds Pediatric Center will help so many families." "That was today's errand before we stopped here," Martha explained. "We thought we'd make a day of it and take care of Timothy's graduation gift too." The revelation hit everyone like a thunderbolt. This unassuming couple had just casually donated $50 million before stopping to shop for their grandson. "I think," Charles said, turning to Bradley with steel in his voice, "you owe Mr. and Mrs. Reynolds an apology." Bradley's professional composure had completely crumbled. I don't know what to say. I am deeply, terribly sorry for how you were treated. I made inexcusable assumptions." "Not just about us," Martha replied. "Your attitude suggests you judge all your customers by their appearance. That's no way to treat anyone, regardless of their bank account." Miranda stepped forward, her eyes downcast. "I'm sorry, too. I was rude and dismissive." Martha nodded, accepting the apologies with grace. "We all make mistakes. What matters is learning from them." Charles addressed the entire staff, who had gathered in a semicircle. Today should serve as a powerful lesson. This company was built on respect for every person who walks through that door. He glanced at Bradley. Some personnel changes will be made effective immediately. He turned back to Martha and Joseph. "Now about that watch. I'd like our master jeweler to take a look. And perhaps you'd like to see some options for Timothy's graduation." Martha smiled. "That would be lovely, Charles." As the chastened staff scrambled to provide the best service they'd ever given, Joseph leaned close to his wife and whispered, "Was all this really necessary?" Martha patted his hand. "Not for us, dear, but maybe for the next couple who walks in wearing overalls instead of designer labels. Sometimes the wealthiest people aren't those flaunting their status. True character shows in how we treat others, regardless of appearance or social standing." If today's story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more powerful reminders about looking beyond appearances. Where are you watching from today? Let us know in the comments below. Remember, kindness and respect cost nothing, but their absence can cost everything, as Bradley Wellington learned the hard way. Join us tomorrow for another story that might just change how you see the world.